Talk Show. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 704. My name is Eric Nilsson, and I don't have a co-host today, but today is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. We're continuing on, and weather in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley is a beautiful sunny day. It's in the 70s. It's finally cooled off from the heat wave that we were having. We were hit like 107 last week, so it's been good. On the show today, we've got who do we have here today? Let me see my notes. Go through that. Oh yeah, we got Gareth Edwards, big community guy. Gareth is a Broadcom solution architect, works out of EMEA in the UK, based in the UK, and we're going to just do a little drill down on what's happening in EMEA, field updates, explore, what's happening with vSphere 9. We're going to talk a little about AI and, how Europe is handling HI. And then finally, my favorite topic, is the data center dead? Is it coming back? We heard Hawk Tan talk about, it's all about the data center and cloud's too expensive and all that. So we'll talk to Gareth about what's actually happening over in Europe, and then of course, because Europe Explorer's coming up, he's going to be doing a lot of and I want to call him Gareth, but it is Gareth. Okay, we're also, he's going to be at the Explore, the community booth at Explore, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And so let's do that. Before we get to Gareth, though, let's talk a little bit about Explore Europe. Registration is looking strong, much stronger than the US, by the way. So that's interesting. At the time, I think we're like a month out now, something like that, November 4th, and we're already October. What are we now? What did I say? We are October 9th. So yeah, we're less than a month away. And the reg is looking good. The event team is not concerned about a reg. So that's really going to be nice. And so looking forward to being big there. We also sponsored the V Rockstar party on Monday night. So that's happening. So it should be a lot of fun getting to see everybody in the community all together. We sponsored that. VMware Code, VMUG, put some money together, gave it to those guys. At the same time, there's a VMUG leadership party on Sunday night. So if you happen to be a VMUG leader, you'll get an invite to that shortly. I think those are going out soon. So that'll be fun in Europe as well. Sunday night. The hackathon is also Monday night. So Monday night's loaded between the V Rockstar party and the hackathon. You should have something to do. The hackathon venue is that cool venue that we used last year. That's down in the, the cool spots of Barcelona, where all the hotels are. So it should be nice. It's a super cool venue. We're going to have food. We're going to have dinner there. So if you want to do a hackathon and you want to come hang out with me, I'm going to be doing ChatGPT coding using ChatGPT, PowerShell stuff. So I'll be there at the hackathon. So that should be fun. And let's see. Then there's obviously the party Wednesday night. That's going to be happening. And then all the sessions. We got all the community sessions. We got the code sessions. We got the code labs. And we're going to be in the expo hall, and we're going to be rocking out. The VMware booth is right in front of us. So everybody, it's going to be a party. So if you're thinking about coming to Explore Europe, I would definitely do that, because this one's looking like it's going to be a barn burner. So I'm excited about that. Having said that, let's introduce our guests. Gareth Edwards, welcome to the show. I think you've been on the show before, right? Before, so good to have you back. We always start with, give us the 2 or 3 minute elevator pitch, who you are, how long you've been working in the VMware ecosystem, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm Gareth Edwards. Thank you for having me back once again. I've kind of grown up in the community. That's where I come from. I came from VMUG, the very shy, introverted guy, sat at the back of the room, much like probably even some of you listen to this podcast. Did one talk, did another, and I just kind of got that bug. Going up there, sharing my story, helping out my fellow colleagues, helping out my peers. And it just snowballed. I went from one organization to another, doing bigger and bigger projects to, it's actually just been 3 years. I actually joined the VMware machine, believe it or not. So it was 3 years last week. So again, it has flown by at, a speed of light. And again, even in that time, things have just evolved. So yeah, glad to be here.
you've gotten a piece of the transition, which is, you come in, you're in one role, you're doing something, and then all of a sudden we're bought by Broadcom, right? And you think, oh my gosh, we're all going to be out of work and it's going to be horrible. And then you see us kind of absorb, and now you see us actually changing Broadcom, right? If you look at how we're doing things, Broadcom is changing to fit us, right? To a large extent, right? So it's interesting now, obviously licensing and all that, they've done their significant amount of change, but from a community perspective, like we just rolled through and we're still going, right? It's like still going. And you've gotten to experience that momentum, right? Like, and time flies, when you're in the community and you're doing stuff, right? So it is interesting to go through that and say, wow, VMware is just a machine, right? They just go, right? So it is good. So I know you're part of VMUG, and we talked a little bit about the fact that VMUG is having a user conference in London, right? So that should be coming up for you. Are you going to be involved there?
Yeah. So I'm happy at that. Yeah, we're actually 28th of November this year. So again, we've got Explore, and we've right on the kind of coattails of that. So we're actually getting some of the speakers over on 20th of November in the National Motorcycle Museum in Leicester. So again, really exciting times, really great agenda. We've got Joe Bagley speaking for us, and other people. Again, we'll hit the topic shortly about like what's going on in the UK. We've got some great speakers speaking about like things like DORA. The DORA Act is a big thing here in Europe. So again, it's going to be a very, very busy event. So do hop over to the VMUG site, and the agenda is building day by day. So do keep a good eye on that.
All right. So you got to say the venue slower so I can hear that. What the venue was? Say that again.
The National Motorcycle Museum.
All right. I cut that. Right. All right. So, I got the National Motorcycle Museum. Well, that's kind of cool. It reminds me of the time that we had the expert party at the Mafia Museum or something like that in Vegas. They had I think it was, I don't know if it was Mafia or Gangland or some museum like that, right?
Yeah. If people have been like a long-term follower of the UK VMUG, they'll know that's kind of our spiritual home. It's where we were many years ago. And, as you said, change and innovation is happening. We kind of looked at it this time around. We want to go back somewhere where it's comfy, somewhere where people feel safe, where VMUG started from. So we just thought it was a great way, like that comfy pair of shoes where you've always been, where it is. So we're kind of bringing the VMUG.
Are you going to be able to walk through the museum when you're in there too, or is it something that you're going to enjoy the museum while you're checking out the UserCon?
There are some exhibits you can walk around during the time as well, and there is a whole other side of the venue where you can walk around some absolutely amazing bits of machinery as well.
Right, and as everybody knows, the UserCons are free, so they're sponsored, right? So if you show up, one, it's kind of cool. 2, it's free, so you get to see the speakers. And then 3, sponsors pay money to be there, right? So if you show up, you help us sell sponsors down the road, right? So you do have an obligation. If you're listening to this and you're in the UK or you're near enough to the UK, maybe you're in France and you can tunnel over for the day. I don't know how that works, but check it out and go reg and show up, because they're going to be fun and exciting events. And I know that my boss knows about the event. Right. So there you go. Because he's from the UK and he's like, oh yeah, we got to give UK some extra money. Right. We got to make that thing rock. So that's good. So you have, let's see. So you got the VMUG UserCon, which is good. The next thing I want to talk about is like, what's the vibe in Europe right now, or in the UK, I guess, around when we were bought, everybody was, worrying about their license fee. Then we announced licenses and everybody went crazy, right? And we had Chris Wolf and the guy you said is going to be at the UserCon. I forget who you said already.
Joe Bagley.
Joe Bagley. Everybody's on the license circuit trying to calm everybody down. There was a lot of confusion. People didn't understand what they were going to get. What's the vibe on that? What's the temperature on accepting of the new license structure?
It's very variable. I think a lot of people are still in shock that because a lot of renewals have come like very quickly after the acquisition, and that people haven't budgeted, and there has been some friction. I've had it with customers.
Everybody has.
It's just sitting down with some of those customers. I've got others that are actually trying to really set the pace and the curve, and they're really on it and already jumping at new features, which we'll probably get into later on. But The thing I'm seeing now with a lot of customers going, okay, let's break this down, really go back and look at this like price per core, understanding, yes, your bill might have gone up, but if you compare that to the clouds, how does that correlate to us? How does that correlate to you? How do those investment cycles come back in? And I'm always about getting the value of what you've already bought and how do we build on that value? So, again, I've been with Joe in meetings, believe it or not, with, as you said, those fractious meetings. And we've kind of come up with some of these customers going, well, actually, why can't you be hyperscaler number 4, number 5? Everyone instantly dives for AWS or Azure, but I've actually then changed the conversation with customers going, okay, so why can't you, Mr. Brand X, be Brand X hyperscaler? Why can't you deliver this back to your business? And get them changing the idea of, yes, you used to buy vSphere license, but now you're buying a cloud operating system rather than just one piece of the puzzle. So this time around, you're getting more into that kind of cloud maturity.
It changes the conversation, and it also forces enterprise to think that way, right? To think about, hey, we're going to use NSX, we're going to use vSphere, we're going to set everything up as a cloud service. We can be a cheaper cloud service. And I think Hawk showed up at the the leadership meeting and said, look, I looked at how much Broadcom, when we tried to move to the cloud, it was 3 times as expensive. So I know that we're going to be cheaper than anything you can do in the cloud. So why not teach people how to run their own hyperscaler, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, going back to my journey before joining VMware, I did that for other organizations, and we joked that we'll probably get into it later. I actually repatronized in my tenure in one of the companies. We moved everything to the cloud and moved back because we made that critical mistake of going, we thought it was cheaper, but when you actually start picking up parts like data, ingress, outgress, firewalling, all these little bits that you can add on, the bits that make everything, the cloud, really shiny, the bills just grew and grew. And then we had, the board was going, it's like, well, we used to have fixed costs and we knew what we were paying. It's like, well, that's not how the cloud works. So, those are the kind of conversations having, how do you help businesses de-risk themselves, evolve, and it doesn't, not one size fits all. So there are some customers who are unfortunately probably feeling a lot of pain, but, there are other options out there to help them along the way.
People are adopting and learning where they're, there's pros and cons to everything, and they're starting to learn where the pros are, and they're adjusting, their footprint to take advantage of the pros, right? And I think that's a learning thing. So, and I suppose that learning will continue on for a year or two as people go through their cycles, right? You might have an enterprise license for 2 more years. You don't have to worry about it for a little while, but then as your renewal starts to come, within a year, then you have to get used to it as well, right? And I think that's And my what I heard was that about a third of the customers actually really like it, and they get it, and they're excited about it, right? That's a third of them. Then a third are like, well, we're kind of neutral. It's a little bit of work for us, but we can see the value. But we know we're going to have to do some work to capture that value, right? So a third are like, yep, we're going to keep going, and we're not thrilled about having to do some extra work to capture that value, but we're on board, right? So that means that a third is really happy, a third is neutral, but they're on board. That's 2/3 of our customers, and then a third are like growling, right? And we see it on the social feeds, we see it in the community feeds. There's a third and they're the noisy ones because they're growling. Everybody pays attention to the people that are, flaming, right? And so, which we feel bad for. I think all of our community members, understand their pain and feel for that. And about half of those, even though they're complaining, they're going to stay with us, right? They're complaining, but they're like, we hate you guys, but we're going to keep paying because we got other things we want to work on, and we don't want to work on this. So we're going to grumble the whole time, but we're going to keep buying your software. So that means that only 15%, because a third is happy, a third is getting happy, and half of the third, which is 15%, are going to be grumbling but continue with us. So then there's 15% that then are like going to leave, right? And that's kind of the metric of that. And then our goal is to get the happy third. We don't have to worry about it. We just keep going. The third that are kind of learning, we need to work with them and make sure that they get comfortable with everything. And then the 15% that are angry, we just need to buy them a box of candy and make them just make their anger feel less bad, right?
Yeah.
And then keep moving the technology forward. And I think that's been the marketing approach to this whole thing, is that, we're keep moving forward. There's like at least 85% of our customers are on board and going to continue on. And then we just have to do good work for them. So keep having Explore, keep having user cons, keep supporting home labs. We finally got resolution on that. We haven't made any announcements yet, but I know announcements are coming up, and then maybe the next half a month, we're getting very close to having a home lab, announcements, and we're talking like full stack VCF home lab, capability. So that should be everybody happy. There's always change in this kind of stuff. What you have to do to get it might be a little bit different, but in the end, we're going to be able to support home labs, and you're not going to have to spend $5,000 a year in order to get a license to run your full stack lab. And again, full stack is good because you're going to learn the whole thing. You're going to get to learn the whole stack, right? Which is good. Now I have to go figure out network switches, and I've avoided vSAN for a long time now, but now pretty much you gotta go do that. So that's good. That's summary of the licenses, which is good to know. You and Joe Bagley and other have been in those conversations, and I don't know if you feel that my percentage assessment was very good. What do you think about those numbers?
Yeah, I think it's fairly accurate. And and again, one bit I just want to do on there. What you said about innovation. Because I'm really easy with those really angry ones. I go to them and go, why did you do this in the first place? And they sit there and you think you're going to get really het up. And you go, well, you did this because you wanted to get rid of those racks of servers. You loved us. You've got so much value out of us. Go back to even when you're doing these cloud dreams, go back to the why. Why did you do this? It goes back to your home lab thing. You did this because this was cool. You did this because it de-risked it. It allowed you to go to bed at night. Go back to the why you did all the VMware stuff in the first place.
Right. Yeah. If you really assess it, right, and what I would say that's right. That's right. There's a big manufacturer out of Minnesota. I can't mention their name, and they went and spent a couple $1 million on the POCs for alternatives, and after a year they just came back and they went, there's no rational other way that we would get as much value as what we already get. And yes, people are complaining, and it might have been a little bit of the cloud story that created this, which is everybody moved to the cloud. The cloud was 3 times more expensive. And so guess what? When you're coming back and you're saying, oh, no, we really want a data center. We want, maybe Broadcom is smart enough to go, well, we're not going to be 1/3 the cost. Maybe we'll be like half the cost of the cloud, right? So there was I think they figured out there was some room here, right? That you really do get a lot more value out of on-prem, which I get. So moving on. So that's less a licensing buzz. What we announced vSphere 9. What's the temperature there? What do people think of that? Or is it just too early because none of it's out yet? Are people believing us? What's the story?
I think go back to your home lab. I think there's more people with their home labs excited about this. I'm getting more questions like, can I run 9 on my home lab? Because I want to get hold of it. But there are some features for me that I think are coming more, if I say more stable, more kind of generally available already. Like memory tiering is a really big one for me with some customers, some medical customers running big farms and VDI workloads and things like that. The price of RAM at the minute versus a couple of NVMEs. Again, there's some really good cost savings there. So I'm personally excited about memory tiering with a lot of my customers because I can see that bringing some great value to a lot of the markets here, especially when you go look at things like edge compute and things like that, where you can't get a lot of RAM in some of these boxes and you can suddenly make a lot appear from nowhere. Really very quickly tying straight into that is DSM or Data Services Manager. Again, a lot of customers seem to be getting quite excited about that I'm speaking to. So, those are the two kind of big things that I hope come out in 9 for me or start getting utilized more.
Does that create kind of some buzz in the community? Like where, we were almost frozen. It felt like frozen for like a year when they announced Broadcom. And then, we were talking about cloud and cloud hyperscalers and all that. But like, this is the first time I actually saw new tech announced that it's exciting for the data center, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I sound like a broken record. Going back to the memory tiering is a lot of people want to try that full stack. And there's a great product out there called Holodeck. If you haven't already heard of that, absolutely brilliant, but it does require a lot of resource. And now with things like memory tiering and NVMEs being fairly cheaper, you know, you can get a really good full stack lab or even a test rig for your product, you know, to test out ready before production for under $1,000. So, you know, that to me that's what excites me, is we're kind of creating innovation with innovation and unlocking people being able to kick the tires before going on that full journey.
Right. And then I got to throw in, because that just made me think that I know I was talking to Carl Childs, who runs the education group, right? And the certifications, he runs the education certification team. And he's like, there is now a VCF cert out there, right? So you can go to go get a VCP-VCF, right? So now you get your home lab stuff. You start training, you go get a VCF cert, and that's just good for you. It forces you to study, forces you to learn what you're talking about. You know, then you get to use it, and now you put on your resume, and you know, you ask for a raise, right? Like in the end, like that's, you know, it's good, and it's still cheaper than the cloud.
Yeah, and again, another weird side thing to that is, again, I can sound like a complete sellout here, is if your company is buying VCF, you, for anyone in your company, you get that training included now. So unlike the barriers of having to go to your boss going, oh, well, I need, you know, the 3-day, 4-day course, that's a couple of $1,000.
Right.
That's there now. You know, if you've got even some smattering of VCF somewhere, everyone in your team gets it.
Yeah.
You get learning.
You get the free education. The education is free now, right? You know, if you got VCF license, right? It's like, and if you don't, if you're like a commercial, you know, I've been talking to VMUG about, hey, I think they have an education partner, and then why don't we put together some community VCF education, right? So, you know, I know that several people have written books on it. I know, you know, we've always had community learning. I think there was cheat sheets on VCF, not VCF, VCP cert. There was cheat sheets. You could go just consume enough community content that you could then figure out how to pass, right? And that's good. Yeah, so I like that.
And we've got some tracks for that.
Right. Yeah. And that I think is good. And the other thing I noticed now that I've been at Broadcom for a year, and I'll put my Broadcom hat on, Broadcom simplifies everything. They just simplify it and everything. And at first you're like, Jesus, I don't want to have my head stick up because they're going to whack it, you know, like it's a whack-a-mole. They're just going to chop. You just got to hide, you know, got to dig a hole, just stay in the grass, right? Don't put your head up. The lawnmower's going to chop you off. But then over time now, I've started to understand it, which is they really believe in simplification. Simplify. Why? Because it's less complex. It's easier, right? You just don't get mired in the weeds of all the different things, right? So take our community platforms and consolidate it down to 1 or 2, right? We used to have 10 or 12, right? And they're like, no, simplify, just because we want to have one easy thing that you all use, and that's it. And then is that price efficient? They don't really care about price. It's less about price. It's just more about less stuff everywhere, right? And that's just more efficient. And I look at the way they've taken a look at our products, and they did the same thing. They're like, you know, we could sell them all individually, and but they're like, you know what would be really just simple? Make one, call it VCF. That's it. Easy button. You order it. You know, there's one part number. They went from 800 part numbers down to like 4. That's what Hawk says, right? And it's like, okay, regardless of the price, it's how quick can you implement? How quick can you absorb? How quick can you learn? Well, if there's only one, okay, that's simple. It simplifies things. It takes you a little while to get your head around it, but once you get your head around the Broadcom simplification model, you're like, oh, I understand why these guys are, you know, growing company, right? They don't blow things up into a, you know, we don't build Google Glass, right? You know, like Google, and Google's always putting out products and then canceling, then putting out. They're the most complicated company in the world, and the stuff they throw out. If you simplify, it just makes it easier, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got a slide somewhere that's not an official one where I worked out we had something like 9,000 different versions of products. You had over 20,000 different combinations. So how renewals are difficult. You said there's now 4. And again, you go back to that simplification. When you get some of these angry people, it's like, well, what about your Netflix or your other streaming providers? You have a few packages and you're okay with those. So why is it not okay in this way? You have maybe a 1-screen package, a 2-screen, a 3-screen, and you choose whichever one you want, and away you go. So, you know, I think there's a lot of value in that simplification. And you kind of at that point, I know people who didn't want like the ultra HD version of a streaming platform, but they use it because it's there. Once you've got it and it's there, you end up consuming it.
Yeah. And especially if they've done the engineering to integrate it all, so it is really one interface, one pane of glass that you're managing it all. Then it's really easy, right? Or it gets consumable.
Well, we've already said it. We've kind of going back again. You said they've made it simple, but they're also investing and developing and releasing so much quicker. Memory tiering, it was mentioned in a few product things, and before I know it, it's already out. It's in release code. And we've seen movements with some of the cloud services and portability rights. Normally that would have taken months, if not years, to happen, and it's already here. So for me, despite everyone saying it's a bit of a rocky train and a hard train, it's a good train. Yes, it can feel very fast paced at points, going probably more like a Japanese Shinkansen now. But it's a good speed of innovation, and if mistakes are made, they're very quickly rectified. That's what I'm seeing, especially now.
That's what happens when you simplify, right? You just have so much less in the way, right? We used to have 4 cafeterias at Broadcom, at the VMware campus. Now we have 1. It's crowded, but it's everything is simplified, right? Now, what does that mean? It means that people are working and they're getting things done quicker. There's no question about that. Like parking lots are full, right? Okay. Everybody's working. Why? Because it's easier to work. You can get stuff done. And people get excited when they get things done, right? The worst thing is to have a job that's hard to get anything done, right? Because everything's complicated. So I can see that. I can see how that's playing out. And we're on the Broadcom beat the drum, bit here, right? Like we sound like, I think we sound like shills, right? For the company. But I'm just being honest. I'm just seeing what I see, right? And I'm just talking about what I see. And I think there was a lot of pain in the license and a lot of pain and everything going away. But then now that I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just so much easier to move around. It's like we cleaned out the garage and you can find your tools again, right? Like it's like you can find stuff, right? So I like that. The strategy is simpler. And then the division, the VCF division, it's easy to hold them to success, right? Like before, all the little divisions would, little business units, they call them BUs, would point at each other. Well, we couldn't do that because they weren't ready or this wasn't ready. And like, it was just complicated. And now you got one division, one SVP. He's responsible for the numbers. If the numbers don't do well, if he doesn't get his stuff out, he gets let go, right? So it's like, you know what? They get things done, right? So it is interesting to see that also play out.
Yeah. As you said, simplification is definitely the biggest thing. And I'm hoping, even I don't know as an employee, there's stuff that we don't even know that they're going to probably announce in a matter of weeks after this podcast when Explorer's here. So, I'm excited, really excited to see what's coming down the road.
Yeah, there's more stuff coming, and the company there's other groups that are doing things, and we're doing stuff with the VMUG that we're announcing, and there's just there's a lot of still movement going on, and I see it in momentum. I definitely see it. We're seeing it in the social numbers. We're seeing it in the advocacy numbers, the influencer numbers. Like so, everybody's turning the corner. That's what I said. But I was curious where it was in Europe and UK. Whether you guys are, it'll be interesting to see how many people come to your UserCon, right? Like whether you see an upsurge in that, right?
Yeah.
I expect you will, because there has been an upsurge, right? And that's all I can say about that. So I would be surprised if you didn't see a record number. We've seen record numbers at other user cons, right? So especially the ones that Hawk come to, but that's a different story altogether, right? Got that. Other topics that are out there, and I know we only have you for maybe another 10 minutes, so it's going to be a shorter podcast than normal, because I know you have another meeting that you're going to have to get to or something. So, but we'll talk a little bit AI. In Silicon Valley, AI is just like the rage, right? Like it is just going crazy, right? Everybody's investing, everybody's talking about the different LLM models and and light models and tiny models and everything like that. I'm just wondering where UK is on, we're Silicon Valley, so I get tainted, right? Like, because everybody's right on the bleeding edge. Are you seeing any kind of AI movement or any kind of capital expenditures or companies starting to think maybe we need to invest in on-prem in order to do AI?
Yeah. Well, again, selfish plug here is I'm actually coming to do an AI talk with yourselves in Barcelona. Again, kind of teach people like that journey. And I think that's the bigger thing for me now, is like getting people on this journey. How do you get AI into a productized fashion? People are kind of, toying with it and playing with it, but how do you actually make that valuable for your business? And again, it's not just about LLMs. It's about how do you enrich it with your business data. And those are the kind of things that I kind of want to pick on, is like, how do you make this valuable to you? Again, admittedly on stage, I do some silly things where I will change voices, will generate artwork. But again, generating artwork, if you make 10 iterations rather than someone drawing one by hand that would take 20 minutes, it's taking 20 seconds, that can really help bring new ideas to the table. So for me, I'm personally really excited about this whole AI trend. And again, that's the other thing with the cloud. A customer of mine really brought this down for me really, really well, is in the cloud, we're much used to renting. And again, a lot of people are used to renting properties. But in the UK, there's quite a drive for like mortgaging or owning your own home. So he's like, well, I'd rather mortgage this and own this, because otherwise I've got nothing to show for it at the end. I can do all this really cool stuff, bring revenue into the business, but I can't sweat that asset if I don't own it. So he's like, I'd rather have predictable costs. So, I'm seeing drives now for getting, GPUs into the data center, so they can actually really push these to their kind of maximum limit.
Right, especially when it's innovative and it's moving fast enough that you might have another project you need more GPUs and more, and like, where does that end? And if you're renting, right, this is going to get very expensive very quick.
Yeah. Right. And again, I've seen a big push for the edge. Again, AI and edge seem to be going hand in hand, especially in retail. That's where I'm seeing the biggest explosion, I think, personally, is like that computer vision. What can we do? Can we stop thefts? Can we understand buying habits? Can we influence buying habits? So if the camera recognizes you coming in 4 times a day, can I do something that will ensure you to come back? So there's some really interesting conversations to be had with that kind of AI innovation.
That's interesting. I did an AI podcast with a buddy who has an AI startup, pipeiq.ai, and we just got him in and we talked about AI topics. And one of the things we talked about was Google announced Notebook LM, right? And you got to go Google that, right? Notebook LM. And what it is you submit your slides into this AI, and it makes 2 speakers that do a podcast on whatever your subject is in your slides, right? And like, you realize that this stuff, I listened to, I couldn't believe it did it, right? It was a beautiful podcast, right? That was generated with a male and a female, and they're bantering back and forth like we are, and they're covering the topics, and the AI engine researched the topics deeper than what was in the slide deck, right? So not only did it banter about everything that we had in the slides, but it also then bantered on stuff that it had found in its own AI engine that, that could enhance. So we had smart moderators, right, or podcasters who were then taking our slides and going deeper on it. And you just look at this, and to your point of using AI in retail to do something completely different, where the way we would do things have now completely shifted, because now you can just go give slides to Google and it'll make a whole hour-long podcast of people talking about your topic, right? And I'm like, that's just can't believe it can be done. Now you talk about Amazon and shipping stuff on a truck, right? And you're like, wait, but if the retail experience improved that much to where they can actually know who you are, what you are, and what you want to buy and do, then all of a sudden, the way you shop might completely change, which then, helps retailers, right? So interesting. And then, right, then the other thing is, where does the data live? Does it live in your data center? Does it live on the edge? Do you need to own it? Yeah, you want to own it because you need to sweat that asset, right? That's a great phrase, right? Like, sweat the asset. Great. I feel like AI, I'm getting older now, right? And I'm like, how many new technologies am I going to see, right? Like, I watched the iPhone come out, and then you ride that whole wave, and you're like, then virtualization, I rode this whole wave, and now I'm like, is there going to be another wave? Like, how many more waves is technology going to enable for us, right? But the AI one is just going to be a phenomenal wave, right? Then throw it in with some androids and stuff like that, and you're well on your way to Isaac Asimov's iRobot series, right? Like, it'll be fun. What else is happening in Europe then? And I know we're going to run you out, but like, I think we've talked about the fact that the data center is back, right? I feel
Mhm.
like that, for the last 5 years, I think Carl Eschenbach, who used to be our head of sales, was like, yeah, cloud's going to eat us for breakfast. We're done, right? This is going to be really bad. Enterprise people aren't buying enterprise licenses anymore because they all have clouds. I feel like it's tipped over now, and I feel like the data center is back, and it's going to be the place that you're going to look to put your workloads.
Yeah. Well, again, we've hit on the biggest topic that's driving that is AI. The amount of data this thing produces, where else are you going to put it? You've got other things like regulations coming. A big thing over here, especially Europe, is the DORA Act. Especially financial institutions knowing how they have exit strategies out of clouds. How do they move between them? How do you make them resilient? You're not building an application that can only ever live with one vendor. So there's a lot of really interesting things coming from that. And again, there are bigger laws coming in with different kind of countries, not just Europe, where we've got to retain that data. And that right, also weirdly, that right to be forgotten. How do you manage these two things hand in hand? And I think it becomes easier when you're in a data center because you don't have this massive sprawl. You kind of know where it is. It's in your data center. You own it. You manage it. It's not kind of all over the globe, and you've got no control of where that data may be replicated. So I think that's what's driving a lot of businesses. We know where it is. We own it. It's like parking your car in a parking lot. You know where it is.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, right? And because the data can be harvested so efficiently now, right, in an AI engine, it is important that it doesn't get out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it gets out, your competitor gets it, you could be in trouble, right? Yeah. I could definitely see that. And so knowing where you're sweating your assets and then knowing where they're at and keeping them secure, so that you don't get sued. I can see that, but also just a strategic advantage, right? It's a strategic advantage.
Oh, yeah, it gives you that predictability and that hopefully that cost model as well. I know we all joke about the cost of living is always going up, but that's going to affect everyone, especially businesses. If we're having to pay people more and it costs us more to run the lights, all these kind of things. If you know what you've got, you kind of at least can make a prediction of how long will that last? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And you can kind of hopefully give yourself a predictable cost model. Whereas cloud vendors could just say tomorrow it's an extra $20 an hour. Tough.
So one last thing, and then I'll let you go. Right, supply of gear for a while there when we had COVID, and it's really hard to get computers, hard to get GPUs,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to get anything. Are you still seeing supply chain issues in your customer base now, or is that wrinkle also settling down?
I think it's settling down. I think a lot of again over here, a lot of factories will start weirdly shutting down now, ready for the next cycle pre-Christmas. So, I am seeing a lot of customers trying to rush out, buy licensing, but new hardware's on the way. How do we get this going? How do we, we haven't spoken about today, like, how do I get like a greenfield VCF versus VCF import? All these things because, hardware is getting shipped quicker, much quicker. I've had some customers order it and it be there 2 weeks later. So, I don't think that wrinkle is there. I think there's actually a lot of change. I'm actually seeing a lot
post-traumatic stress syndrome going on where you learn from this that you might behave differently, get your orders in, get them in, even though they are coming quicker. Right?
Yeah, they come much quicker. And again, one thing I'm seeing is a massive shift from Intel to AMD. That's the biggest change for me in a data center. I'm seeing a big seismic shift with people changing vendors, changing, actual CPUs. That's the biggest change for me. I think I'm seeing is, it's not just a one-stop shop. It's all Intel. It's all this vendor. A lot of people are now opening up choice.
Yeah, and that might have been because of supply that people started to second source or three source.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, then when you've opened up that and you've got things qualled, then it's easy to then that stays, right? Because the more stuff you have qualified, then the more you're going to do that. And that might have been because of supply chain that's also accelerating. Neat stuff. Well, I keep saying I'm going to let you go, and I know you did tell me you got to go, and we're already a little bit past the time. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at Explore. I know you're helping us in the booth a little bit, so that should be fun. And I'm looking forward to the community sessions and AI and everything good. So any last words from you before we let you go?
Yeah, I know people are going to probably ask me after this. You've mentioned already, is the V-Rockstar happening? Yes, it is happening. We're trying to get the final little bits tied off next couple of days, so please bear with us. We're hoping the announcement will be out soon with the tickets going up. But don't worry, check my Twitter, check Patrick's. It is coming. We want to make it a great event. I think we're joking already. 8 till late, I think, is the term we're using. So anyone who's at the hackathon, we're hoping you can come join us as well. Yeah.
You know what? I didn't put you and you together with the V Rockstar, right? Like Julia gives me somebody and says, "Hey, go do it," and I'm just responding to people in mail, and I don't even know who everybody is anymore. I was like, "Yeah, okay, you. Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad we got you some money to do that." The thing about in Vegas, it was there wasn't a lot to do for the community in the evenings, right? And so we had that conversation, and we're like, you know what? We need to find something. And I think Julia said that. Well, and I think I asked, like, "Hey, is V Rockstar are those guys going to do anything?" I didn't know it was you. I just said, "Are the guys going to do the V Rockstar? Because maybe I can pull some budget together and help them, right? If it would make a difference." And that's when Julia connected us. And so I'm glad you're able to do it. I'm glad. I hope you get enough sponsorships to make that happen, because we gotta, there has to be a place for the community to get together. And I felt like the leadership party wasn't enough, because it's not a lot of, there's only 7,500 leaders, right? And there are a lot of people going, "Why can't we get the community together?" Right? So I'm glad you guys are doing that, and I'm glad I can help a little bit. Yeah.
I thank me and Patrick really thank you, and I'm sure the community will thank us all. And that's the biggest thing, is making sure we can get as much of the community in there. I can't promise to squeeze everyone, but we will always make room for everyone. That's it. Even if we stood outside with a beer, we'll be there.
That's what I say. I mean, sometimes you have to wait a half an hour or whatever and hang out with everybody, right? But eventually people leave and come. Everybody's not staying all night long anyway. So that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. That's awesome. All right. Well, at the top of the hour, thanks a lot. I think we're going to be back next week. So I don't know what the topic's going to be yet, but Gareth Edwards, thanks a lot for being here. We'll see everybody again next week. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend. Go get some barbecue. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.